Okay, we are live on Facebook and YouTube. How's it going, everybody? If these shows resonate with you, please share. We're not going to play the normal intro. We're going to actually play a video produced an expression by our guests, Shekinah and Sananda, who we're going to pull up onto the, oh, lost my voice. Oh, okay. So thank you for telling me that. So anyway, we got 11 people in the Zoom room. We've got people filling up in YouTube and Facebook. This should be a great show. But anyway, I'm going to allow people time to come in. I'm going to play this this video that's produced by our guest. And I'll be back as soon as it's over, and we'll bring them up on screen and get to know this brother and sister.
Have you ever wanted to know deeper levels of your divine nature, but didn't know where to turn?
Have you ever contemplated how truly different your life would be if you had been shown how to live in that true divine nature in all moments?
How would your life be different if you had people in your reality that demonstrated great integrity, virtue, and freedom through spirituality while celebrating life and having fun?
Imagine that you were a part of a community of family and friends that energized, upheld, and supported that spiritual evolution.
Imagine that this community of spiritual leaders brought out the greatest qualities inside you, free of judgment, for they themselves had done the work necessary to live as compassion.
Imagine you and this beautiful community serving the world in a purposeful way, where every new day gave you a feeling of fulfillment, focus, purposeful presence, and importance, all while aligning with your soul's mission on this planet.
Imagine accessing awe-inspiring knowledge that is facilitated and energetically architected to create an accelerated result for inner peace, lasting happiness, physical radiance, great abundance, and universal love.
Imagine learning masterfully crafted wisdom, combining with proven sciences with ancient and esoteric secrets, all shared to bring out your latent potentials, high sensibilities, and even your spiritual gifts.
Imagine world teachers that are here to hold you through high spiritual processes and initiations that ascend your consciousness and enlighten your soul.
Imagine yourself luminous in body and mind, with every cell of your being filled with a greater quotient of light. And that light then leads to spiritual sovereignty, revitalized health, divine relationships, and eventually genetic liberation.
Imagine a world where humankind has reached divine consciousness, and the golden age is not just an unattainable myth, but a completely manifested reality.
Imagine no more.
That's the real deal right there. That's, let's see, that's called Welcome to Twin Ray. That's on Twin Ray, Shekinah, and Sananda, YouTube. All right, let's get our beloved brother and sister up here. Let me get everything organized. Hang on a second. Okay, here we go. Wait a minute, we got a few things in the chat. Okay, all right. So let me get, we got 14 people in the Zoom room. Welcome everybody. We've got about 50 people on the other platforms. Let me find them. Here we go. Okay. A lot of people coming in the door. Wait a minute. There we go. Unmute. Wait. Hello, brother and sister. How are y'all doing?
Blessings, beloved Todd.
Oh, blessings, Todd. Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Great energy wherever you guys are. Is that your home? That's an incredible energetic portal there.
Yeah, this is our alchemy space. This is where we create many miracles and potions and all sorts of magic.
Wow. Let me just take it in for a second. That is just amazing. So in typical Soulology style, it's spontaneous, intuitive, creative, imaginative, and courageous. As we just get to know each other in front of all of our brothers and sisters. I have a feeling you guys have been on this path for quite some time. Did you go through your initial reawakening on an individual level, or did you go through it together?
That's a beautiful question. Our journey was definitely enhanced on a massive scale when we came together. And so that goes without saying, but we've been on the path for a long time now, and it's just accelerated so much more since we've been together, which has been married for 3 years now, and it's just been a phenomenal acceleration in our life and in the way that we can serve as well.
That's right. And for both of us, really the path was quite different. For beloved Sananda, he really went through the path of alchemy and cultivation. Many years of living in caves, meditations, Himalayas, great masters, teachings, etc., in order to prepare for what is now. And of course, beloved, you can share more to that.
Yes, and obviously my path was a little bit different and unique, but Shekinah's path was more the path of destiny, where she actually went through a death initiation, and her process was actually dying for 6 days and then being resurrected, and had a full walk in consciousness. So a whole new consciousness came in. The original soul complex left her body, left her in that 6-day period, and a whole new being emerged. And it took her about 7 years to integrate that process when she went through a full resurrection.
Wow. And then I think I detect an Australian accent and a British accent. Is that right?
Yes, my accent absolutely begins in Australia.
Yeah.
And Shekinah's is well-rounded, actually.
Mine have lived in many different places, and honestly, my voice has changed so much, even just in the last 2 years, that it is astounding, and it's not complete yet. And this is exactly one of the possibilities that happens when your DNA begins to mutate. And the reason this is happening is something that we can talk into in a bit, which has to do with the plasmic waves that are coming in right now.
Yeah. And so on a human aspect level, which is, we really know we're not human only, but I got to ask the question. So how did you meet? How did you guys connect? Was it through the internet, or did you come across each other in person?
That's another beautiful question. Our journey, we actually met in Ibiza, and we met in a beautiful space where mutual friends, we invited Shekinah to come and stay in this area where very north. So Ibiza is obviously a lot of mixed energy, but in the north it's very spiritual, it's very sacred. It's a very much a tribute to the goddess of the islands. And so we invited Shekinah coming over, and then what happened was just inspiration led to another, and I invited her to come join on a Egypt tour. And so then we co-facilitated on an Egypt tour, and so we only really met each other for maybe 24 hours, and then she went back to California. Then I actually left Ibiza. I had a home there and had a life there, and I sort of packed up and traveled off to the Himalayas and did a trek through the Himalayas. And then about 3 months later, we ended up in Egypt together.
There's a bit more to the story on my end if you'd like to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was actually in Glastonbury, living there for a few months. And all of a sudden, well, many things occurred in that time frame. But all of a sudden I heard a very clear guidance that I needed to go to, for about less than 3 days, to Ibiza. That there was something there that I needed to do. And I knew that there was a portal that I was going to open there. So I knew that already, but there was more to it. And so a mutual friend came and shared that there was 2 beautiful beloveds that were living in Ibiza, and that every time she saw me, she thought of him specifically. And so, you know, I said, of course, this sounds exactly in alignment with what I've already been told. And so within a day or two, booked the travel the moment I heard that this is what I needed to do, showed up, and these beloveds hosted.
Yes, and then the day after she left, I literally left for Nepal and did a tour through Nepal and took students through the Himalayan regions. And then I stayed in the Himalayas for a few months. And then I wasn't decided if I was going to go to Egypt, because I was just really on a sojourn back to the Himalayas to spend time with the rishis. And then she was coming into my meditations in her light body form, like consistently. I was going to different caves on the Ganga and just doing my daily bathing rituals and my pranayama and my kriya, and then all of a sudden I'd see this illuminated form come into this dark cave, and she would be smiling at me and watching me. And I was like, and she said,
I do that.
And then she basically said, you know, we must be in Egypt. And so we did, and it was perfectly aligned. We didn't actually make any plans to communicate when we would arrive, but we arrived on the exact same day, I think 5 days or 4 days before we actually had the tour. So, which was just perfect synchronicity. And then as the tour unfolded, we came to realize that we were already married, and that and there was a lot to take in at first, because obviously there's just such a recognition, but then all the veils dropped, and what revealed was just this beautiful love that we've had for many incarnations and lifetimes. And we travel the world and have been literally inseparable ever since. We haven't spent a day apart since that day.
We're usually in about this on length away from one another.
Yeah.
Wow.
But honestly, right before I went to Egypt, and even before we had met, while I was in Glastonbury, I received, "It's time for you to go to Egypt now." And I asked, do I know the people that I'm going to be going with? Or am I going by myself? Because I had spent years traveling barefoot around the world, picking up the codes from the grids in many, many different sacred places. And so it would have been very normal for me to be told, no, you must go to Egypt by yourself. But that was not the case. It was, you will know the moment that, you know, that the alignment occurs, and that it is not anyone that I know at this time, but that I will meet very soon. And so from there, that's when Ibiza showed up. And right before I was about to head to Egypt, the night before, really the entire pantheon of the Egyptian deities showed up around my bed, especially the Hathors that came very, very close and said, "Forever altered you shall be in the next 3 days." And then from there came, this is when we came together. And really what was happening at this time was we were given missions, so to speak, where we had all this work to do.
Yeah, it was very much service orientated. There wasn't really a romantic experience in those initial time that we actually came to. That was just all work related. It was all service focused and service driven. And what came from that was just, again, unveilings of remembering our lifetimes together. Yes. So it's all very.
That's the short term.
That's the short.
We need to make a movie. So
yes, we say yes, absolutely.
I'm picking up on a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. I can relate to a lot of what you're talking about with Morgan and I.
Oh,
and so I can,
wonderful.
yeah, I can say, yeah, and so I'm going to kind of like fast forward a little bit, but so there's a lot of awareness coming to the table in regard to these couplings, whatever we want to call them. I mean, twin ray, twin flame, divine unions, whatever. That their role is mission oriented. You,
Absolutely.
it's not romance. I don't know if this is right, but if it's not romance first, but the mission is there. The mission is the foundation. At least in this incarnation, it seems to be. There certainly is a higher frequency of unconditional love that they seem to be bringing together as they produce a third energy that is, that is partly composed by their mission. But there also seems to be some type of correlation between their own evolution in this incarnation of their relationship, in terms of how the individual kind of parallels the collective. In other words, one's masculine, one's feminine. They have this dance going on. We all know that there's been, on the collective level, the feminine came in a few years ago and made her presence felt. She had landed and then started to put good stress on the old paradigm relationship, the patriarchal relationship, and so on. So has your relationship followed or even led or matched the dance of the feminine and the masculine collectively as we've evolved as a group?
I would say no.
Yeah, it's definitely been an expression of alchemy. I would say that for us, it feels
just one consciousness.
We feel very, very entwined together and one and unified. And it's interesting, like just at the subtle levels, like even if Shekinah or I would feel pain on a physical level or discomfort of any level, physically, both of us would pick it up. So if she was feeling pain, I would feel that pain. And if she would be thinking something at any moment, I would instantly have that telepathic connection and vice versa. It definitely feels like the unionship of our fields have become merged to a point where we feel as if we're one consciousness expressing itself in two bodies.
And I think it also has to do with the fact that we're both liberated. We
went through a process where our consciousness really dissolved itself to recognize the non-self. And then at that point, we're only serving the true beloved, which is God, which is source. And we serve each other from that space in selfless gratitude and humble remembrance of that one true self. And so it's not a, because we know the traditional relationships have that sort of return to the masculine and feminine understanding of oneself, and it's the recognition of the feminine inside the masculine, which is a big initiation for the collective right now. For us, it feels a lot different than that, in the way that how we've already merged in that evolution, and we feel that this is a template that may all relationships will merge to that point where the two become the one. And that's really that mystical third that you expressed, that the entity that's created from the relationship coming together. So it does feel like we went through those initiations in preparation to actually have this relationship where we are now.
Absolutely. And neither one of us were even remotely looking for anything.
Yes.
It was all about merging the internal masculine and feminine, so that if and when that were to be presented, there would be no searching for something outside of the self for completion. And it feels as though that's probably the flame energy that occurs, the dance.
But one thing that you shared, Todd, as well, that feels of high resonance, and it is this unionship for divine service. There's this divine service and calling that's happened to initiate these divine unions to come together. And it's focused on the service of the planets, of humanity, bringing in new inventions, bringing in new architecture and teachings to really catalyze the growth of our collective species in a way. It's sort of like the next evolution is the leaders on this planet are going to be the divine unions, the divine couples.
Absolutely. And just to speak a tiny bit about the twin ray. The twin ray is not just, you know, the two of us coming together, or the heroes, gammas, union coming in, this is also very much related to what's occurring on the planet right now with the lines that are coming together.
Yeah.
And so we're representing and holding that so that the earth can really evolve, and so that more beloved unions can come together with grace and ease, because these lines, as they come together, create that hierogamic union within the earth herself.
And these lines are being prophesied by, you know, certain Hopi nations as well when they speak about the twins returning. And the twins are these major energy currents that come from the North and South Pole. And so there's new energies that are returning to this planet, new lines of consciousness, which are basically low sound waves, low standing sound waves, because of the plasmic discharge that's coming in from the atmosphere. And Earth's magnetic field has dropped. There's these new energetic currents. These energetic currents haven't been around for many, many thousands of years, but they come back through cycles depending upon the consciousness of the planets. And so what we see is the word twin ray is also a representation of the age in which consciousness of humanity is evolving into that androgynous species where they're completely merged and liberated in their masculine and feminine, and there's another species that's emerging out of this, and then these plasmic energies that are coming to the planet are mutating the genetic level and unlocking more of the light quotient inside the human species and many different species in order to really make that quantum shift of consciousness at a very collective way.
Yeah, and so much of the information that, well, to me, what seems to be the most powerful information at this stage of the game is from people like yourself talking about their experience. You know, because it is kind of like the product of, let's say, the Akashic, or what we came into the incarnation with. Add that to our experience up to that point, and then to this stage where we're kind of, I guess, almost like writing the new blueprint, the new template, you know. In your case, so have you, I mean, well, I guess what I'm saying is, do you have a clear understanding of what your role is and what your mission is on a singular level as well as a group level? Like, in other words, do you see yourself as part of a team of divine unions that are working to accomplish something? And do you have an idea of what your role is as a couple?
We have an extremely clear understanding of what we're here for and how we're going to accomplish that. Do we feel that we are a part of a team? This is a co-creative reality. The universe cannot exist without the co-creation itself.
Yes.
And with that said, we know that as a twin ray, we are here as a mother and father figure for all divine unions, so that they can come into greater balance and harmony. And that is what we represent.
And it's making that transition into understanding the impact of one focal point, whether it's in relationship, and how it positively can affect the entire world. So every way in which we treat each other and what we do in our rituals and in our work and in our community, we see it through holographically as how it's implementing throughout the world at large. Yeah, so it's really just focusing on how we can best serve this unionship, any and all unionships in that co-creative experience, and how that can assist humanity at large. So we see the distinction between our personal experience and the collective, but we know how they're one at the same time. And so every effort towards that divine union, that divine love, that divine connection, we're very aware of what we are here to do at a planetary level, in a relationship level, at a community level, at a level of certain teachings that we must bring forth and that we're starting to do as well. So we are aware of all that, and we see the collective whole and how that is engaged.
And we consistently No, we don't have the luxury to be anything but impeccable in our lives all the time, because we know as source fractals that everything we think, every action, every deed, every intention is going to have a great ripple effect.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things too, I think that's quite fascinating about these unions, uh, and I guess I'm biased, but is, many of us had divine episodes, divine intervention, people might call them paranormal experiences when we were waking up or and as we were on our individual path. And it's one thing for an individual to go through something like that and wondering if they were crazy and imagined it, but it's another thing to actually experience these things with another person.
Yes.
I mean, we've talked about it. I'm, publicly over the years. I'm curious. Do you? I almost feel dumb asking this question because I already know the answer. But do you experience a mutual dimensional experience that involves the physicality? In other words, I know you can go into the ethers and do the work that we do, but when the human aspects involved, like, for instance, we might lay down in the bedroom and then it fills up with star family,
Yeah.
or dragons come, or different entities. Does this kind of thing resonate with you? Does it happen to you?
Yes, very regular, we must add.
If it's not happening, we're questioning why it's not.
Yeah, exactly, right.
And it hasn't not stopped happening ever since we got together. It's interesting. We sometimes share the same dreams, so we dream in the same dimensions in the astral realms, and then sometimes we wake up exactly the same moments, and we're met with an entourage of different star fleets and beings that are in our room. And we've also had the gift from for myself, a very young age, of clairvoyance and being able to see interdimensionally and having that ability. So it's been very normal. And then for us, we share those same high sense perceptions, basically. And so we'll just be communicating, and we'll be able to see exactly what we're sharing. So it'll be a unified perception that we share. So we really do hold that unified consciousness that allows us to perceive reality from a very, very clear way.
And again, this leads into telepathy. This leads into all sorts of other, I guess, high sensory perceptions within our communications to each other.
And it feels like there's been as the bond goes through its evolution as well, it's like it's never stopping evolve. There's new gifts that surface, there's new abilities that come through. And it's this beautiful balance of the magnetic and electric energy that
create the dielectric,
that create that field and container together that really enhances a lot of our unified awareness and how we perceive reality together. So yes, it's in the short answer, absolutely, and it's a great joy to have that.
And have you, because a lot of people look at these unions, or even the idea of the union, and there's a lot of distortion, and it's understandable. We're all human. We've all come through this conditioning. I love the fact that you pointed out right away that it's mission oriented. The romance is kind of secondary. It's kind of like the icing on the cake. But in terms of challenges to the relationship, to kind of humanize it a little bit, have you had any challenges? And if so, how do you handle them? And what I mean by that is just say antagonistic energy, whether it be etheric or physical or a person or an event, things that have challenged you, challenge your connection.
Beautiful question. And the only challenge that we've had per se, and wouldn't perceive it as a challenge, but is the recognition of how to serve one another, and just to understand how to serve one another every day in every way. And really there's that recognition of the trust and surrender. And the masculine's role, and especially my role, is always to surrender to the feminine, surrender to the goddess, surrender to that is before me and reflecting a reflection of me. And the opposite is the trust, and from the feminine aspect is that trust. And so we have a very balanced and blissful experience. We've been very blessed to have done the work required to hold this container together and just offer of our love. And we like to play games with each other, knowing how much love can we express to each other, how much more love can we give to each other, and see who really can give the most love in the days and in the weeks. And so it's, any relationship may go through its refinements, but for us, we've really been blessed to really acknowledge exactly where we are and who we are together, and it's just been a beautiful unification. We have the understanding that when I look at her, I look at myself. When she looks at me, she looks at herself. There is no separate person here, so there isn't that duality invited, and we don't entertain duality into our relationship. We are very responsible with our communication, and we take full responsibility for the way in which we serve each other.
Excellent. We had a communion episode. I don't know. I guess this was around the equinox. In the intel that came in was that there had been enough work done by couples, and I think others as well, that basically that the golden child had been conceived and would be birthed in, let's say, December, on or around the winter solstice. Have you received any intel like that we have reached a level collectively where that conception of that third energy has actually occurred and will be coming forth in a birth?
Absolutely. And even just yesterday, we received very clear confirmation that the doors that are needed, or the gates that were needed to open in order for the higher consciousness to be able to even begin to reach a critical mass, connected to the second heaven yesterday. So that is a very, very powerful and extremely meaningful event for not only this planet, but for the entire universe and all sentient life.
Yes, and it also appears to us that there's a reflection of the amount of divine unions being prepared in order for the frequencies to actually come to the planet. It's like you can't have the frequencies without the divine unions, and the divine unions can't be there without those frequencies. And we saw this really step in at the end of 2017, when the initial energy currents, which was these cosmic lines that were coming back into the planet, was the end of the solstice. And that happened, and ever since then they've been reappearing.
And we were actually in the King's Chamber in the sarcophagus.
Yeah, unbeknownst to us, it was quite interesting. We were speaking to a dear friend and geobiologist that was tracking these energy lines of the cosmic radiation that has been coming in through the atmosphere and the solar and chronic ejections and coming through the iron core of the planet. And so he's been tracking these ley lines. And why they're significant is because it's sort of like, if you think of the Giza Plateau, or you think of Machu Picchu, you think of those lines. They're known as something like a type 4. The ones that are come in are like type 1s, which are like 100 to 500 times more powerful than those sacred sites that collectively have unveiled right now. These energy lines are just so much more powerful, and these are the very grids that the Templars had been tracking, over 1500 years ago. And so they started returning to the planet at the end of 2017, and they've been gradually evolving, and more of these lines have come through, and they come in pairs. When they come through, they come in pairs, and there's a masculine and feminine sort of pair. And these lines are so powerful because their alchemy that they're bringing is also discharging an output to the collective field, to the collective mind that's preparing. So what we're seeing is that it's a fusion. There's these divine unions that are coming in relationships that are focused on service, that are in the purity of their hearts, serving source. And then as a reflection of that, there's these energy lines that are coming in to support. And so we've really been tracking the evolution of these lines and the grids, because the grids are changing. What was for the Kali Yuga and the last cycle of consciousness is completely different. It's a new geometry now. And because of that,
it has to be. How could it not be?
Yeah,
you understand.
Absolutely. And because of that, yes, we are absolutely seeing the conception of the divine children, the child that is the consciousness that has been rebirthed, and the children that are to come back. And its evolution is absolutely going to peak, not just this end of this year, but in the years to come as well.
Yeah.
And there's also one more thing, beloved Todd, is that when the day that we actually first came together in Egypt, the day that we first were given these missions, whether it was return to Adam and Eve, return to Isis and Osiris, and do certain very, very particular workings, this was the day that we came to find out from others who map these kinds of connections. This was the day that when we came together, there was a huge event that occurred that thus allowed an opening for 144 million divine unions to be able to eventually come together. So when the twin ray came, which was of course what we're holding and representing, this thus allowed for all these other divine unions. So it used to be 144,000 that was expected. It became 144 million on the exact day we first started. We came together and started with the Adam and Eve and everything else that we needed to do.
What was that date?
That was the 12th. The 12th was it on December?
I think it was the 9th.
Okay, the 9th.
I believe it was the 9th.
The 9th of December
2017.
2017.
2017, December 12th.
9th.
No.
We can give you the exact date.
I see it as the 12th. Shekinah sees it at the 9th. It's always in the three-day interludes, but it's around that time point that there was this energy, and what we experienced was just basically the gates opening. It was just the gates opening, the frequency being dispersed. And so how accurate that would be, when we've asked certain people that have been tracking the grids themselves and doing dowsing on the lines, have said it's been around that period of time where at the beginning of December, around the 9th to the 12th, that time point has been where the energy just tremendously increased, and it's ever since has just stepped up.
My birthday's the 9th, and that day resonates with me.
So, there you go.
So, one of the things that we just received, actually more than once in the last, I know we did a couple nights ago, but this occurred at least once, maybe twice more in the past few weeks, as it was leading up to this time. And I think it falls in line a little bit with what you were saying earlier about these twin ray lines, the energy of it. And that is that, there are many that are about to take a massive leap in their abilities, including like bilocation and telepathy and so on. Yes. Have you received anything like that recently?
Yes, and we can testify that it's absolutely possible, and it's absolutely the pathway of the human species evolution.
We have experienced things that would seem mythological for most people on the planet.
Yeah, and these grids, like we're saying, coming down, they're the gateway to the gods. They're literally portals to walk through to different parallel worlds, or higher. We don't call them parallel worlds. We call them higher frequency matter worlds, because they're definitely frequency matter. There's just at a higher oscillation. There's no more than 3 dimensions, but there's basically a higher density of consciousness in those realms. And so those lines that created those connection points are now back on the planets, and that's that's why there's a catalyst of what this divine unions or the twin ray energy coming back, because as the cycle of time, which just came out of a long 12,000 years of the matriarchal, then another 12,000 years of the patriarchal, and now it's coming in where it's that divine Christos Sophia, the divine child, the divine union.
Yes.
But that union is that transcendence of the duality of gender, but into the wholeness of spirits, which is what twin ray represents.
Yes. And do these twin ray lines that are anchoring onto the earth, are they in specific geographical locations like the old ones were? And if
yes,
so,
they absolutely are. They are not wanting to be revealed at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, there's certain points. A lot of them are in the oceans, but there are certain points that are making tremendous nodal intersection points on landmass. And so there's a lot of repair that needs to be done though as they come back, because there's an understanding of, if you know the grids and you understand how the grids work, if you put certain architecture and megalithic structures on those grids, then you can really control the broadcast that goes through the energy lines. And that's when you see a lot of the old grids, there's a lot of churches on these nodal points. There's a lot of broadcasts about certain agendas and sort of certain organizations that have a common feed into the collective consciousness. Well, these new lines that are coming through that are here, and there's a lot of work to be prepared for them. And there's certain prophecies that have to be fulfilled for them to actually evolve into what they're coming to be, is to make sure they're safeguarded so there isn't any closed source architecture on them. So they're open source, they're for the collective, there's certain periods of time. It's not just certain areas, but there's certain periods of time when the energy peaks. And when it peaks, there's a portal that opens up. And when that portal opens up, there's the potentiality of interdimensional travel.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, beloved. That was so beautifully shared. And also, another reason that these are not ready to be revealed is because beloveds have to build up their bodies to be able to even stand near these frequencies. Yeah. Really, because the level of energy that is coming from the cosmos, that is coming from the earth, it's coming from the sun, it has a very particular energetic template that really most beloveds have not prepared yet for.
Yeah, it's like if you see the whole earth being blanketed with these neutrinos that are coming from the sun and coming from the cosmos, and that plasmic discharge that's coming in. It's like a blanket, but there's high concentration points, and that's what these lines are, because there's no real difference between the particle and the field in which the particle comes through. But there's these oscillation rates, that there's high concentration, and those concentration create these lines. And so there's certain high concentration points, which are certain nodal points. But if you step there and you go there, but your architecture, your light body, your field isn't built out for that, then there can be an instant shift in your consciousness and an instant shift in your frequency that can create burnout.
And it can create mania, it can create psychosis, it can create an inability to tell what is real in this physical matter world versus what's occurring in another, and how that interacts with someone.
But the exciting thing is that if you have done the work, if you have done the internal cultivation, if you have, then this is what you've been waiting for.
Which brings me to my next question. Well, and because, there's so much interest, and I think people have interest. Everybody wants that partner. I mean, I'm talking from a human level. And then, of course, you bring in the rest of it, and it becomes something much greater than we could ever imagine. Some people like yourself, and I think Morgan and I and others are experiencing this. It's unfolding. Well, one of the things that's absolutely mind-blowing and extraordinary to me is the sacred sexual vibration. And I'm, intimacy. I'm not talking about 3D intimacy, obviously. I'm talking about Herioscamos and beyond. We found that in these interludes, there's been It's been like a transmission. It just comes in. It's unexpected. It's a, you know, a moment where the higher self, I guess, and the human aspects all come together, almost like a 4 into 1. But with it comes dimensional experiences involving the physicality, morphing, information, data, intel, visitation, and a lot of different things. Does any of that align with your experience? Have you had beautiful, pleasant surprises through your intimacy? Does it open gateways, portals, that type of thing?
Yeah, we have more of a brahmacharya relationship with how we use that energy to really come up into the higher chakras. And as it does that, yes, there's been an amazing blissful reunion in many ways, and it's to the point where it doesn't really leave. It's like this. It's like when you are in such divine union and such emergence, when your kundalini and when your energies have unified that level, it's like having an orgasm literally in every single cell of your body. And the throb of that energy stays with you for months.
And that's because our kundalini is not, it has risen, so it's here, so it's accessible at all moments.
And so it's for us,
yeah,
for us, it's been interesting. It hasn't been a like, oh, the waves coming in and we're going through this experience. No. For us, it feels very controlled. It feels like we can just sit in meditation, and we can be either right next to each other, we can be on the other side of the house, or we can go into that space where our bodies quantify into the field,
multiply, quantify,
and we can feel that, and through that we've been learning to master the opening of those portals, the opening to those realms. We know what specific energy needs to come in through it, but to make sure that our consciousness is so unified in such a way that we're doing it with knowing what we're doing, not just surrendering to what's doing. But
I think that's a really perfect thing to share for all beloveds, is there's something about unconscious merging, and there's a vast difference between conscious merging and what that looks like. And when you're in whatever experience you're open to having, recognizing that there are dimensional doors, there are portals, there are all sorts of beings that want to come and play with your experience. Yeah. And so, you know, we always say this is about, we bring miracles, magic, and mastery. Well, this is mastery, knowing exactly what you're looking at, and not only what you're looking at, but who's looking back to see what that connection could potentially be. And it's very important to hold those boundaries.
Yes.
So yes, surrender, but also be very aware.
Because once your energy has unleashed itself really, and it's no longer bound, your biology goes through a unification process. Even your chakras evolve into a new template. Your bioenergy field evolves to a new template. And this is something that's, you know, we're really focused on bringing through. What's the next stages of
beyond awakening? What happens after you awaken?
What happens after that, and also, you know, what's the evolution of that? Because there's an evolution individually. Obviously, when the divine Hieros Gamos happens individually, there's an evolution when it happens in divine relationship, and then there's a level of mastery that is attained when you come together in those energies. And you're right, there's so many miracles that can come from that pure, loving energy that is just springing forth from the heart. And there's so many miracles that can come from that pure love. And the feeling of that love is unparalleled, of course. But there's also another level to learn how to not only ride that, but then master that energy. And so our relationship has been an evolution of, we haven't entertained the lower expression. We're more in we're more of a brahmacharya, where it's sacred celibacy, but it's pure intimacy through the higher chakras.
Yeah. we're talking the same language. And
Perfect.
but I think that's a big part of, I mean, we were both celibate when we met. We both had our own journeys, of, you know, um, realization and
Yeah.
empowerment. And we both chose to be celibate. You
Yeah.
know, I've met a lot of couples. I've talked to a lot of couples, and I find it, interesting that, um, for the most part, they have a traditional, uh, relationship in terms of the physicality and the intimacy. And I think, how does that work? You know, and I'm seeing, a lot of them back off of that, and, you know, kind of take time apart, or go into a kind of a mutual celibacy or that type of thing. So that seems to be a big part of it. And
Yeah.
and almost like you don't have a choice, one way or the other. This is going to happen. And I know for us, when we started to live together, we started to go there 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different times, and every single time, one or the other or both stopped. We just You just know, you know. And so it continued, and then the type of experiences that you're talking about occurred. The last one we had was a couple of weeks ago, and we were just laying down about to connect. We connect every night when we lay down. That's when we do our thing. And for some reason, we just started to kiss, like, you know, a couple of teenagers. It was innocent, genuine kissing, and that's all there was. You know, there was nothing else. And for 20 minutes, uh, we were not of this world. It was a you know, it involved every sense, every higher sense. We were in the cosmos. There were no walls, there was no ceiling, there was no bed. There was all kinds of stuff happening, and it was so powerful that we had to stop. And
Mhm.
we couldn't even talk about it for a day or two. So to me, this is what you were talking about. Like, it's not about happening, it's about what happens after it happens. Like, where is
Yeah.
this going, you know? I have to ask you this too, because it's such a new there's such a newness to, uh you know, the awareness of the reality of these couples. uh, do you ever get triggered? Are you guys ever out of alignment? And if you become out of alignment, whether it's one or the other, or just the energy, whatever the reason, how do you come back into alignment?
Beautiful question. We don't believe in the word trigger. We believe in the word opportunity. Everything is an opportunity. And in saying that, we don't really entertain that those frequency points. Every single day we do our ritual, we clear, we activate, we do ritual to bring our set point into our life. And so so we're very conscious with every action that we do, and how we interact with one another, and how we interact into our life. And we're very aware of what we're creating, how we're creating it. So
Again, the stakes are just too high.
yeah, so it's a difference. We're in a different space where we don't entertain that. It's sort of it doesn't really resonate in our frequency,
Hmm.
to experience what the trigger would be. We see life as opportunities, and how we see those opportunities is just acknowledging every single thing that is being spoken, being said, being felt, and taking full responsibility for that, and loving that, but not acting out from that. We don't react to our reality. We
Yeah.
we initiate our lives with each other. So we're in a place where we feel very stable and integrated in our relationship, where it isn't having those glitches or those wobbles or those schisms that can take place in a traditional sort of relationship, or at the very beginning of a relationship as well. It just felt like we merged, like putting a hand inside a glove, a beautiful velvet glove.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you too about any interactions you might have had with other couples. We had a period, from, I want to say, in the summer of last year up until maybe toward the end of last year, maybe into this year. I can't remember. Um, but so we weren't really counting, but we eventually had a communion where, the you, me, we, and it came in and said, you have now been in the physical presence of 12 couples carrying the code. And basically, in that, communication was talked about the power of the couples being in presence with each other, and how that creates a further expansion of the coding that's being anchored in through these couples. Have you had any experiences meeting other couples that may have been carrying the code? If so, what happened? And have you received any information about the network of couples, whether they're in their presence or not, that's taking root in the earth?
Another beautiful question. We have many beautiful twin flame divine union couples that come into our community. And what we see is the evolution of 12 couples coming around certain points on the earth at certain times in the year with certain codes that each one have a collective code, but they also have individual coding and an individual role to play for the collective and on behalf of the collective, and for them to participate in a certain sacred ceremonial space to actually bring in more and distribute more of that coding throughout the collective. So yes, the answer is yes to that, and we are absolutely preparing many of the divine unions and twin flamed relationships that come into our community to do exactly that, to make sure that they're fully unified, giving them the tools and the ways in which they can refine themselves to be of that higher service, because we do see an interaction between the sacred divine couples and coming together at certain points in the year, at certain places on the grids, and making sure that there's certain things that are done for the evolution of the species. So we see a very important role for that.
Yeah, and I just got a big affirmation on that one. So when I get that one in the writer, it's whatever you're hearing is absolutely true, you know. And so, and then again too, I think it's kind of a you're right, there's a new geometry, there's a new math. I think you said earlier, a new geometry.
Yes.
Part of that too is, it seems to be anyway, I mean, you've got these connections, the individual, so to speak, the individual is on their own path to oneness, so you have this individuality, then you have this couple, so it's like you're still an individual, but you're not. It's weird. Do you guys ever have situations where the energies or events lend to that you have to move through something alone, or rise up in your power alone, or say be apart to work through something, or do you do everything together?
No.
Yeah, for us, we do everything together. Everywhere we go, there we are. And so it feels for us, as we reflect back on our journey, is that everything was prepared perfectly in proportion to allow us to come together. And we do understand that there is other couples that are going through their individual stuff and their relationship stuff at that time, because there's such an acceleration of what happens when there's two unions come together. What we can say is this: we use the terminology twin flame to twin ray. A twin flame is where there's that dance. That's still those two different flames, but there's that dance between each other, and they're igniting. The twin flames are inside their own heart with their masculine and feminine, but they're attracting in that divine unionship in their relationship. But there's that dance. There's still that individuality, but then there's that unification together. But when they get to a point where they ascend in their consciousness to a point, because you're always ascending, there's never an end to your ascension, or there's never an end to your enlightenment as well. It's an ongoing process that's complete once you return, but then it starts again and it starts again. It's always ever evolving.
Everything has an ing on the end of it.
It does. And so as those flames unify and they ascend together, what we can say is that we see that there's a return to the source point, and where there's no more individuality consciousness, that identity has been completely absorbed beyond space and time. It's been completely absorbed into pure love, and it's being completely absorbed, and that's what we call liberated. And that's not only a level of consciousness, it's also a level of the genetics. The genetics actually change their rotation, and the genetics no longer hold the ancestral karma or the ancestral encryptions from the paternal
Descending
and the
side.
maternal lines. It's you just don't hold those memory points in the genetics anymore, and your DNA goes to an up spiraling. And just as the sun goes through a pole shift every 12 years, there's the north and south pole flip over, so does your consciousness. Your north and your south pole flip over. So your kundalini is awakened and opened, and your channel is completely anchored. And that flame literally turns into a pillar, a ray. It's no longer just a flame of ignition, it's a ray of consciousness. Yeah. And so you've completely immersed in that, and then you merge as one. So you're really one consciousness. So that's what we see as the evolution of the twin flame and the twin ray. We don't tend to speak too much into the difference of the twin ray, because as soon as you say one's higher than the other, everyone wants to be the highest and wants to go for that one. So we just sort of speak of divine unions but we do know that there's an evolution. Just as there's an evolution in the energy field, just as there is an evolution in all species of life and the universe at large, there is an evolution. Whatever we label that evolution, there is that progression that we see, and that's something that we're here to share and teach.
And the difference between another difference is between a twin flame and a twin ray, is that the twin flame is still evolving through their own life, individual and soul experience. Mm-hmm. Twin ray is no longer in a soul learning or even in a monadic learning. We have released all of that and ascended past even the monadic level. And that's what allows a twin ray to even begin to come together.
Yeah, and the monad.
Liberated, ascended consciousness.
Yeah, and the monad is an example of the oneness of a soul family, the oversoul, all the different expressions that have come together. And when you've cleared not only your ancestral genetics, your soul genetics, and you've evolved beyond those different extensions and lifetimes, past and future lives, then you don't have that cycle of karma anymore. You know, you're not in that space. And that's where we see where, a twin ray example is that liberated consciousness that has ascended. And so we see you become less of the I, but more of the we. And that we is really that universal consciousness that is expressed through two vessels.
And it's even in your astrology. It's even in a couple's actual astrology.
Yeah, there's actual, it's important to know that in your astrology, in your star charts, with your natal charts, when you infuse them, you can actually see the potentialities of what a twin flame would look like and what a twin ray would look like in its astrology, and how those combinations of star alignments would actually make up. And it's not saying one's better than the other, or one saying one's higher than the other. It's really understanding that they have a different role. One has one role, one has another role, and then they evolve through their process. And so the role of the twin flame is really...
It's a planetary ascension team. The twin flame is part of the planetary ascension team.
And it accelerates like phenomenally, like just without a doubt, the acceleration that a twin flame can have on their liberation path together in union is just phenomenal.
64%.
Yes. But what we will say as well is that if one of us is going through a upgrade or of one level, what we'll see is one of our roles will either be help facilitate that process, hold space for that process, help activate that process even more, or do anything that's needed for that. And simultaneously, one may have the symptoms, but both receive the activation.
Yeah, we've got that. Yeah, we've got that. One does it, the other one does it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I like what you said too about, because that seems to be becoming clearer, is when one is going through something, the other one, I guess there is, more of a telepathy or a knowing, kind of knows what to do. And you know, that's this has been great. I'd love to collaborate with you guys again. I got another show. We're gonna have to get. I'm gonna take a break before I start it because I got to take in all this code I just received from you guys. But yeah, thank you so much. Where are you guys located?
We are currently located in San Diego, California.
Okay.
We have a beautiful temple space here.
Oh, wow.
And And you know, it feels also right as well to just to share to your community and audience. We just created a webinar called Beyond Awakening. It's a masterclass which speaks more in depth of what we shared about the grids, about what's happening in the planet, about the years when it's going to peak as well. It's going to peak in the next few years, and so we've just shared a little bit more about the specifics. So if you want, Todd, we can share that link with you, and you can share that.
Yeah.
We're also doing a 7-day online retreat as well.
Yeah, about the light body.
All about the light body, how to activate it, what it actually means.
Did you say on Sunday?
Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I would suggest, because you know how, even though it's the internet age, everyone's got to have it user friendly. But anyone on the live and on the replay, what I would suggest is you go to, you can do it on YouTube at Soldier One Studios channel. Go to the comments and put whatever links and explanations that you have, but also do the same on Facebook on my page, because we're on other pages, but that's the main page where most of the traffic is. So we've had 144 people maxed out on this broadcast. Thank you everybody for coming. And I just want to say thank you for honoring us with your presence and sharing space with us today and letting us into your life. And hopefully we'll do it again. I'm happy to hear that you'll be doing something on Saturday. We're going to be doing one on Sunday. You can't make this stuff up, so it's been a real pleasure though. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of everybody.
Thank you so much, beloved Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
So happy to be here with you. And just to clarify, ours is a 7-day online retreat.
Yeah,
7 days. Okay.
Yeah.
Please put that information on my page on this broadcast, and then on YouTube as well, because I know that people always get response when they do it. So I'm sure there's going to be many people interested. But thank you so much.
Much love to you.
All I love, beloved. Thank you so much to the whole community and to everyone who's watching.
Until the next time.
Yeah.
Namaste.